I think Loki just delivered one of the most expensive bottle episodes in television history. Let me explain what that means and also dive into episode 3 next.
What do you say?
Good for me.
Hey guys, it's Sean O'Connell, the managing editor here at CinemaBlend, with my breakdown of episode number 3 of the ongoing Disney Plus series Loki from Marvel Studios. And at this point now, I will remind you that this is going to be spoiler-filled. If you haven't yet seen episode number 3 of Loki, titled Lamentis, back out, go to Disney Plus, go watch it right now, and then once you're finished, come on back, press play, and we'll get into some of the most important things that we learned. So, episode 3 is the halfway point of this series, so I kind of thought things were going to move along really quickly, and we get to see the end results of what Lady Loki did at the conclusion of episode number 2.
I'm Sylvie now.
But instead we got what amounts to a bottle episode. And for people who don't know what a bottle episode is, it's usually something done by a television series to keep the main actors in one location so they can keep the costs down and utilize one location to save money and use it later. However, by transporting Loki and Lady Loki to a moon that's about to be decimated, Lamentis 1, in the year 2077, it required a very expensive amount of production.
It doesn't make sense, does it?
No.
So it's a bottle episode in that we don't really, dive into a whole heck of a lot about the plot, and we learn more about the characters, but it was, it looked amazing. It was one of the best looking essential bottle episodes that I've ever seen in TV history. And we did learn a couple of important things, some things that I really want to break down that were part of this episode and could potentially push us through into the second half of the season. Starting with the first thing that really caught my eye, or ear, I guess, is the revelation that the agents of the TVA are variants themselves.
A regular person.
Loved margaritas.
This kind of feeds into a narrative that if you've been paying attention to my episode breakdowns, I've been saying that the timekeepers themselves, I believe, are frauds. And if the idea of the TVA, the fact that these agents were created by the timekeepers in order to maintain the consistency of the sacred timeline, and now we learn that that isn't necessarily true, then I think you're going to follow it up the path of rational discussion, and you'll learn that the timekeepers themselves are not necessarily true. And so once you know that the TVA agents are variants themselves, or, potentially people from Earth who created timeline deviations, and now as I guess maybe a penance, probably they're working for the TVA, but don't really know that they are doing it that way.
Rude.
Some of the things that you learn about them starts to make a lot of sense. Mobius's obsession with jet skis makes a lot more sense when you realize that, hey, maybe one time he was someone from Earth who probably loved riding jet skis.
Because they're awesome.
Even Gugu Mbatha Raw's character potentially could have been a judge in a previous life before she did something that caused her to create a variation or a nexus event, and is now being held by the TVA and forced to work for them as a TVA agent, or she's in this instance working as a judge.
For all time.
There was that moment, too, where Sylvie gets really close to these golden elevators, right? Now, the golden elevators, to me, are kind of like the curtain that's hiding the wizard. I'm going to keep using the Wizard of Oz analogy until it stops making sense. But, like at some point in this show, I guarantee we're going to get a shot or a sequence of Loki and Sylvie and maybe Mobius, because it's Owen Wilson and he probably needs to do something prominent, on those golden elevators and going up, down, I'm gonna assume up, to meet the timekeepers. And that's when you're gonna sort of realize that the timekeepers are not who they are. That's my guess. Listen, it's at episode 3. It is June 23rd, and we'll find out by the end of the episode if I'm right or not. So
Remember that.
it's interesting in a show like Loki, where so much of it is potentially misdirection. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I spent the bulk of this episode on the moon in particular, wondering if this was an enchantment created by Lady Loki. We're going to get to her in a second. But, the way that we saw in the opening scene that she is able to, she's way more powerful than we anticipated. And the way that she's able to get inside somebody's mind and create a complete illusion to almost get them to reveal stuff that she wants them to learn. She was trying to convince that guard to tell her where the timekeepers are, where they're hiding, and she used that sort of enchantment or illusion to trick her into believing that she was someplace safe. I really did think that somehow she was maybe tricking Loki in order to get him to keep talking so he would reveal some stuff that she needed to learn about him. Now, there's a flaw in that knowledge because Lamentis as a moon wasn't really a memory of Loki's. He'd never been there before. Instead, it was just an apocalyptic event. And we know that she's been hopping from apocalyptic event to stay ahead of the TVA and to be able to do some things inside there without affecting the sacred timeline. So I do think if this was an enchantment the entire time, then that probably would have been revealed at the end of the episode. Instead, the arc blows up, and you saw Lady Loki, or Sylvie, as we'll get to in a second, sort of stumble away, realizing that their last bid to, charge up the Tempad and get off of that destructive moon, or doomed moon, essentially, has been ruined.
Jeez.
Now, I'm not, because so much of Loki is misdirection, I'm not convinced that the Tempad that Loki showed her is actually destroyed. He might potentially have another one available someplace, or maybe the real one available someplace.
So you're just fully a magician then?
But they just need to find something that will charge it. Maybe the collision of the moon and the planet will produce enough energy to charge that Tempad and get them off there at the very last minute. But hopefully this happens in the first few minutes of the next episode. I don't want to spend too much time on Lamentis with them sort of spinning their wheels and us not moving the entire plot forward.
Hey, change the subject.
All right, let's get to Lady Loki, or Sylvie. And I kind of mentioned in the episode 2 breakdown that Lady Loki might actually be serving as the MCU's version of Enchantress also, and this sort of furthers it along. A, because she's able to do enchantments, and they call them enchantments, but in the comics, Sylvie Lushton was a character who woke up with magical powers when Asgard moved its home location to Oklahoma, of all places. It made sense in the context of the comic book storyline. I know that Oklahoma is a strange place to put Asgard.
That's ridiculous.
But this kind of led to other people taking on personalities of people from Asgard, and Sylvie Lushton woke up with the powers of Enchantress. She actually used them to be a hero and joined the Avengers in New York City at one point, and this might be the direction that the MCU is going to go with their version of Enchantress. But whether we move forward calling her Lady Loki or calling her Enchantress, it's clear that she wants to be called Sylvie and hates being called Loki.
Don't ever call me that.
So that, to me, I'm not sure if it removes the idea that she's from another multiverse. Like, she's a variant of Loki, and we did see that version where there are multiple types of Lokis, and they come from different locations, and they vary in shapes and sizes and have different powers. I'm trying to figure out what her ultimate goal is, like why she has a beef with the TVA, why she wants to take them down, and I can only assume that their actions, in order to maintain the sacred timeline, have prevented her from getting back to whatever timeline that she wants to be at. So she wants to sort of destroy it, restore the presence of a multiverse so she can go back to her home, because we learned a lot about her background through snippets and bits and pieces. Like, she has similarities to our Loki. I'll refer to Tom Hiddleston as our Loki.
Not me.
In the fact that they were both adopted. But then you see like slight differences in the fact that her family informed her that she was adopted.
What? They told you?
But she only has vague memories of her parents, and I kind of wonder what that means too. So, there's still plenty of mystery in her backstory, and a lot of stuff that she's protecting from Loki, because this whole episode was about like, hey, can we trust each other when the chips are on the table? I found it pretty interesting that, there were a lot of people who were holding on to the fact that she had been labeled as Sylvie in some credits on international episodes, and they were like, ooh, that's a big reveal, she's going to be Enchantress, and then this episode just came right out.
I'm Sylvie now.
So I think that this character moving forward is going to be some sort of amalgamation of both Enchantress and Lady Loki, and will reflect a lot of her powers. But Sylvie came across as someone who is extremely powerful in this episode. So let's move on to the last bit of topic of conversation that I want to get to for episode 3. The hardest bit about this show is that you don't know what to trust. You don't know what's real and what isn't real, and what can be believed and what isn't believed.
God, now I understand why Thor found this so annoying.
You learn some really important things, and a lot of people are going to commend the episode for finally declaring Loki as bisexual.
You're a prince. Must have been would-be princesses. Or perhaps another prince.
A bit of both.
Kate Herron, who directs the episodes, was on social media this morning talking about the fact that that's something she absolutely wanted to make sure was canon. So that bit of dialogue between Tom Hiddleston and Sylvie is really important. You know, it's great that they've established Loki as a bisexual character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think it's really important too that we learned some more personal information about Lady Loki so that we get attached to her ultimate mission. But that's what I want to know. I want to know what the ultimate mission is, because we went through a whole episode where we didn't learn anything about where the reset charges went to. They got dropped into different locations, and I thought we were going to get some ramifications of that. Outside of, you know, a quick run through the TVA to bring them all the way up to the golden elevators, there were no interactions with any of the people we'd seen in the series except for Lady Loki and Loki themselves. It's just the two of them on their island in, again, what I kind of referred to as a bottle episode. So one of the things that I really need to know is, what is her ultimate plan? It was described briefly as just getting to the TVA, tearing it down, creating a power vacuum, and walking away. It can't be that simple like that, because it's, as has been revealed in this episode, it's something she's been working on for years.
Well, what do you propose instead?
I don't know.
So it has to be something a lot more elaborate. Maybe it took her that long to figure out how to work the TVA technology and to come up with the plan that would allow her to hide in disasters so that they couldn't find her. But there's no way that that's just that simple. So I need more details about what her ultimate goal is in terms of taking on the TVA. I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the video, but my speculation would be it's because she's from a different type of multiverse. We expect this television series to lead into Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And, you know, her sort of decimating the sacred timeline by the end of this series and creating or restoring the multiverse would be something that would require Doctor Strange to get involved, and then could also branch the Marvel Cinematic Universe into a much bigger realm of existence where there's different characters in different multiverses playing back and forth. And if Sylvie has been one of those characters all along, it's a great way to sort of introduce us into the concept of it, because here's a character who is a variant of Loki, you know, a different version of Loki who's part of another world. And here she's trying to take down the TVA in order to get back to her world, or to bring people from her world into her location. So I need to hear more about what her beef is with the TVA. I'm still very uncertain about that. There was a whole lot of, you know, it's a lot of hot air and misdirection that leads to us ultimately questioning how much we can trust and whether we can trust the characters as they're being told. That's Loki's deal. So when you build a television series around him, that's going to be part of the problem with, you know, as you're watching it. But I think in the long run, you might be able to sort of bypass this one, and it depends on how quickly the story picks up in episode number 4, because there's so much that I want to know about in terms of how is Mobius dealing with the betrayal of Loki, what happened to the reset charges, what is Sylvie's ultimate goal. Like, at this point now, we spent a lot of time establishing who she is and her relationship with Loki, but now I need to know going forward what her ultimate plan is. And I'm wondering too what you guys think. I want to know how you thought about this episode. I want to know what you are choosing to believe from the stuff that Sylvie revealed to us, whether you think a lot of it is misdirection or almost all of it is misdirection, or if this episode ends up becoming far more important as we get down the road because of maybe things that were revealed to us that we didn't realize. Like, for instance, the jet ski thing that Mobius told us is now a very significant clue saying, oh, this guy's got a much bigger backstory than you anticipated. He actually could have been, or potentially is, a human who is now a variant who's been brainwashed to work for the TVA.
He's on it. I watched the videos. Some of them.
So, you know, it's a possibility that there are a lot of clues in episode number 3 that we just haven't picked up on, but we'll have to wait until episode number 4 to find that out. So, I will be back here for episode number 4 for analysis and breakdown. To make sure that you don't miss the next episode or analysis of Loki, hit subscribe down below, and then turn on your notifications so that the minute our next video drops, you'll be the first ones to know about it. And I'll see you back here for some more Loki analysis next week.